Welcome back once again to another episode of the debate room that I am creating to discuss things that are happening in the F1 or are gonna happen, or things that I think are wrong, or things that I think are worth debating, talking about, right? And there was something I read the other day about F1 doing some going to some racetracks due to the money. I think it was Stefano Domenicali saying that there is no racetrack that is indispensable. All the races can be gone and the new ones can come. And the F1 has to go there where money is, which I think is an approach that perhaps is good for the F1, right? I mean, right now the F1 is doing good economically, thanks to the budget cap and thanks to mega contracts of some racetracks that I showed in previous episodes. All the teams, I think it's for the first time in the history, all the teams are making money. All the teams are good economically, right? Some more than others, of course. If you have watched Drive to Survive, you will see that Haas, even though they are making money, or breaking even at least, they are not losing money, but they cannot afford a driver like Daniel Ricciardo, who wanted $10 million, euros, whatever you want to call it, per season, right? Haas cannot afford a driver like that. But still, they are doing okay. Of course, if they go higher in championship, they will gain more money in exchange, of course, of some wind tunnel and designing points that will allow them to try to develop the car a little bit better. However, this is raising some discussions, especially in me, who has been watching F1 since the 90s, for example. Should F1 sell, whatever you want to call it, sell its soul? Should be sell its soul. Anyway, this is wrong. You know this channel has many problems, but anyway, you understand the message, right? Should the F1 sell its soul? Should they go from, let's say, more traditional racetracks, more into racetracks built in, especially now that we see that they're going a lot to the Arabian Emirates, right? Should they go to this kind of racetracks where more money is given so that the F1 has a better economic health, let's want to call it? Should boring Grand Prix that make the spectators, someone like me or the viewer, you want to call it, should those Grand Prix, like for example Monaco, one of my biggest enemies, should they be kept in the Grand Prix and have like Belgium, Spa-Francorchamps be taken out? You can see here the calendar, for example, right? The Chinese Grand Prix will come back probably in 2024. It's a Grand Prix that, of course, it's good for for the F1 to keep it there. It's not the most exciting Grand Prix. You have some overtakings. If it's raining, perhaps it's interesting. But which race isn't interesting if it's raining? Well, I can tell you one. Monaco. My biggest enemy. I think this Grand Prix should not be in the calendar anymore. It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't adapt to the F1. But anyway, you can see the Bahrain. I'm not gonna say Bahrain because Bahrain, I think it's a decent racetrack where overtakings are possible, and sometimes it's an exciting race, right? It's the opening Grand Prix. I mean, for me, it's okay. Saudi Arabia, oh my god. But anyway, let's go one by one. This is the calendar for 2023, and you can see some Grand Prix are coming new, such as Las Vegas, for example. Qatar is coming back, which it was off last year because they were doing some renewing and adapting the racetrack to the F1 other than MotoGP. So, for example, Spa-Francorchamps. For me, it's the best race in the calendar. It's the most exciting. It's a very traditional, very unique racetrack. It's the longest in the calendar, 7 kilometers long. And I mean, it's the racetrack for the F1, right? It has everything, ups and downs, fast corners, low corners, straights. It's everything. It's like the complete racetrack. However, they have economical problems, of course. They pay, I think it was 22 million euros or dollars every year just to be in the calendar. And due to the amount of people that they can host, which most of them are posted here, and I think here, it's not a racetrack where they can host a lot of people. You cannot put like 100,000 people watching the Grand Prix, of course. So, which means that the income is not going to be a lot either. So for Belgium, it's in Belgium, right? The Belgian Grand Prix, it's difficult to pay $22 million, even with sponsors and everything, to the F1 and then try to make some benefits from it. There's many other races in this racetrack, like the WEC or Tourist Grand Prix or lower open formulas. But still, paying $22 million for the F1 is a little bit a lot. Of course, Domenicali says that, Stefano Domenicali, I'm saying Domenicali because he's the one in charge of the F1 right now, let's say. Or at least the commercial part. He said last year that no Grand Prix is indispensable. Like, if Spa cannot pay the canon, then they will go somewhere else. But of course, Monaco, which is for me one of the enemies, can stay because it's a traditional Grand Prix, even though it's the worst Grand Prix of the calendar. And here is another example of the worst Grand Prix in the calendar. They take Spa out and they want to rotate it with Zandvoort, for example, which they are right next to each other, right? The Netherlands and Belgium. Now with the Max Verstappen fever, of course, the Netherlands needs the Grand Prix so they can sell, create tourism and everything. You will see that the Grand Prix, which has a place, especially I think it's here and all this area, is full of people. And I mean full, it's fully packed. They made a show, they have DJs and everything. I mean, they made it very good. Just for Max Verstappen. This racetrack, the only overtaking point is here. You can put a DRS here, it doesn't matter. It's the worst Grand Prix by far. It's very narrow, there's no overtaking spaces, it's short. All this area for the F1 is completely useless. They made this a little bit longer so you can have some more overtaking chance here, but if there is no safety car or anything, this racetrack is extremely boring to watch. It's very narrow, like I mentioned, very old. I mean, I think for those 70s F1s where you would sit and going sideways and all these things, maybe it was an exciting Grand Prix. But for the current F1s, it's not. This corner here with the banking, yeah, it's very unique, but still, it doesn't give you a chance to overtake anybody. Even if you go all this area here, it's very narrow. Not even two cars can go in the same, like one side to side, right? So this Grand Prix for me should be removed and not be sacrificed for Spa-Francorchamps, for example, where you can actually have an exciting Grand Prix, especially if it rains. I mean, maybe it's so long that maybe it will be raining here and here not. It happened before. So they want to rotate it with this one. I think for me this is a big mistake. This is what I call, of course, selling the soul, just because Max Verstappen fans are here. I mean, instead of the Netherlands, they can take the car, drive 2 hours and be in Belgium to watch the Spa-Francorchamps. Or maybe Spa, if they have so many viewers just for Max Verstappen, they can build more stands for people to watch and get some more income, right? And this is my biggest enemy, Monaco Grand Prix. This is the worst, the shortest, the narrowest, and I mean, the race is the qualifying. You qualify first, you win the race, basically, more or less. Something like last year can happen. Well, Leclerc was in P1, and thanks to Ferrari's mistakes, they lost the race, of course. The race started with some rain, then it got wet, dry, and blah, blah, blah. However, I think everybody agrees with me that on Sunday, watching those 78 laps is a torture. You know nobody is going to overtake anything. They're going to try to overtake in boxes with some undercut or something. But you cannot overtake. That DRS, they can remove it because it doesn't help. One can just place the car in the middle of the track and nobody will overtake them. Useless Grand Prix, once again, I will not get tired of saying that. Useless, boring, not exciting, and by the way, it's the cheapest Grand Prix. The Monaco Grand Prix pays 10 million fixed per season just to host the Grand Prix, plus some income tax income percentage for the F1, right? So they estimate it's gonna be around 15 to 20 million totally, but still, it's like just because you can park your boats in the harbor and have some beautiful blonde girls showing their legs, or I don't know, sunbathing. I don't know. Really, I don't understand why Monaco is still in the calendar. It's I cannot understand how Monaco is in the calendar and Spa isn't, or it's not gonna be from next year on. So this is the example of the type of Grand Prix that should not be in F1. Perhaps before, in the 50s, yes, 60s, 70s if you want, but in the 90s and everything, this is a racetrack that doesn't make any sense. You cannot expand it, you cannot make it wider, you cannot make it more exciting. It's worst for me. I mean, this Grand Prix should disappear from the calendar. There are much better options in the world rather than the Monaco Grand Prix. Another Grand Prix that is extremely boring, which, by the way, for this year they removed this useless chicane thanks to the thing that with the new F1s you can follow the car, so they will make it back to the previous layout where this is a big corner like this, the fast one. Thank God, because that chicane, it was killing the whole Grand Prix. But anyway, and you can see that here you have the DRS, completely useless. And Barcelona racetrack, more or less like Monaco and Zandvoort, overtaking is quite difficult. You can only overtake here. And it's not very easy, by the way. And usually the Spanish Grand Prix also creates very boring one car after the other one Grand Prix. Last year there was some excitement thanks to Max Verstappen's rear wing not working, and the Mercedes miraculously was working. Leclerc's car broke down when he was extremely destroying everybody else. Carlos Sainz had a horrible weekend as well, so there was some kind of excitement thanks to these kind of factors. But if nothing goes wrong, this racetrack is boring. Either the Ferrari last year or this year is going to be the Red Bull for sure, are going to win by far, like destroying everybody else, mainly because you cannot overtake either. If you have a fast car like the Williams, for example, they can put a low wing, and even if the DRS you have it, you're not going to overtake them. So one of the races that should be removed from the calendar. Spain has other racetracks like I think it's Aragon, which are newer, and they have other layouts which could be more exciting than Montmeló, for example, right? Again, this racetrack has been in the verge of disappearing from the calendar, but every time it looks like something happens and they renew the contract for another 2 or 3 years. Honestly, every time this happens, I am praying that they don't renew the contract. I don't want to see it. They were talking about replacing this racetrack with Jarama in Madrid. They were talking with the engineer that remodeled Zandvoort to try to make Jarama go back into the calendar as it was in the, I don't know, it was in the 60s or 70s. Which for me is another big mistake. Jarama is even worse than Montmeló. It's a narrow racetrack. It's one of those old school racetracks where they are narrow, very corner-y and tricky, not a big straight line. Which is, for the current F1s, it's a race killer. I'm gonna call them race killer racetracks, right? You cannot overtake, you cannot do anything. It's short, again, old. Doesn't make any sense to have that racetrack. If you're gonna go to Jarama, keep Barcelona at least. I don't know, if you need to have a racetrack in Spain. Jerez doesn't make any sense either, even though they were trying to modify it to make the back straight a little bit longer. But it doesn't make any sense to have this kind of racetrack. Again, I think in Spain, Aragon should be one of the racetracks to be considered for the F1. If not, honestly, don't have a racetrack in Spain. Like the same way they don't have it in France. I mean, Paul Ricard or Magny-Cours are very bad racetracks. Le Mans, you're not gonna race in the 10-kilometer racetrack for the 24-hour of Le Mans, right? And the shorter version is also not good for F1. So don't race in these kind of racetracks, please. Another race killer, Abu Dhabi. One of the worst and most boring races in the calendar. Ask Fernando Alonso if you want, in the 2010 race where he spent I don't know how many laps behind Vitaly Petrov, because even with the DRS they were not able to overtake a Renault. A Ferrari, which was fighting for the championship, was not able to overtake a Renault that was not even close to being in the top 10. And if it was not for the safety car, if it hadn't been for the safety car in the 2021 season, it was going to be another boring Grand Prix, because usually the fastest one is going to escape, and even if you have DRS, you cannot overtake. This corner that they modified doesn't make any sense either. There was a chicane there that kind of made it easier to try to overtake there. Now with this fast last corner here, it's even worse. You cannot overtake, you cannot you defend the inside, and you're not going to overtake from the outside. So, and all this area, again, completely useless. This corner might be exciting. This corner, I think it was a good decision to put this one instead of that chicane here. But still, this racetrack is another race killer. Overtaking is kind of difficult, and usually races are extremely boring in this racetrack. And it's the last race of the season. However, again, like I showed in another episode, they are paying 50-something million just to be the last race of the calendar. But for me, there is no emotion, let's say, no attachment to this racetrack. Race killer. Another one, Qatar. Again, they are paying, like, I think it was $55 million just to keep a racetrack where nobody goes to watch the race, by the way, because you only have the stands here. The rest of the racetrack is empty. And the only place where you can overtake is here. The rest, it's kind of not possible to overtake. Maybe here, but no, you're not gonna overtake. There's only one DRS place, by the way. It's a long straight, and probably if you have low wing, it's gonna be kind of difficult to overtake, as you have probably seen in the 2021 race, where it was not the most exciting race. So let's be honest. I would call it a race killer. It's more exciting perhaps to watch than the Abu Dhabi, for example. You have all these nice corners over here, these fast corners. It's more of a racetrack than Abu Dhabi, but still, it's I wouldn't be racing here if I could be honest. I don't think it's an F1 racetrack. It's better than Abu Dhabi, once again. Better than Monaco, and maybe better than Barcelona, better than Zandvoort for sure. But I don't know. Qatar, perhaps from all the, let's say, Arabian Emirates, or including Saudi Arabia, perhaps, Qatar might be the best one. And Saudi Arabia, another useless racetrack. It's very narrow, very fast, kind of dangerous. Yes, it's exciting, those kind of things. But as a viewer, you have this DRS to overtake. You cannot overtake. Everything is fast, kind of dangerous, single line, narrow. And then here again, you cannot overtake. So there's only one point of overtaking. And usually, as we have seen in the past, we create really boring races unless, of course, having these walls really close and having these high curbs and everything create accidents. So you have the safety car, so you can kind of mess with the order of the race a little bit. So this racetrack, I wouldn't keep it in the calendar. They were saying they want to move it for 2020, I don't know if it was 6 or 8, to another place in Saudi Arabia where they were building another racetrack. I hope it's much better than this one, to be honest. But I wouldn't keep this racetrack in the calendar. Of course, for them, they are paying, I think it was $58 million to be in the calendar. It's a very good marketing to get to the world, to show they are very open, because people have really bad opinion of Saudi Arabia, same like Qatar and Abu Dhabi and all these races. But does it help, honestly? Thanks to propaganda and media, news and everything, everybody has a horrible opinion of Saudi Arabia anyway. So let's see. I mean, this racetrack, I wouldn't have it in the calendar. I call this selling the soul, going to those races just because they pay a lot of money. Miami, yeah, of course, it's a race organized by the F1, and we saw last year it was not the most exciting race either, right? If it was not for the safety car, Verstappen was going to win very easily. Leclerc was going to be second, and then you can see from Leclerc to the third one, it was a big distance again. You have the big back straight. You have this. Yes, you can overtake perhaps in these 2 points, but maybe more exciting. But if you're gonna have let's say one Grand Prix per country, I would keep it in Austin, to be honest, instead of Miami, and of course not Las Vegas. But anyway. I don't think it was a success. It was the first race, so let's see how it goes in other editions. Perhaps this year there is a much more interesting race, and we can enjoy it more. I don't know. But Las Vegas, the one that I was talking about, I am not expecting much of this Grand Prix, to be honest. I could be wrong, but those races where you have a lot of like straight. I'm guessing this is gonna be the pit lane place. I am not sure. Of course, not in the casino place. So probably it's gonna be here. I don't think this racetrack. I have seen some laps. It looks like it's gonna be wide. Yes, because streets in the US are usually very wide. But let's see how this racetrack is gonna be. Usually, street races are not very good for F1. Let's be honest. Monaco is really bad. Jeddah is not very good. And now we have Miami, which was not a very good success so far. And now we're gonna have Las Vegas, which let's see how it goes. We have the one in Baku, but Baku usually creates interesting races, so I'm not gonna include that one. Let's see how Las Vegas goes, but honestly, there are built racetracks in the USA that are much better, I think, than Las Vegas. Of course, Las Vegas, you will have 5 million people watching the race from the hotels or from the stands that they are going to build for the race. But again, another one, Imola. This is more old school, right? Narrow, very cornery, and you can only overtake here. And as we saw last year with Alexander Albon and Lewis Hamilton, for example, Albon had very low wing setting, and you could see that it was not easy to overtake. There was a huge train of cars and nobody could overtake anybody, and it was boring. I mean, it's a boring racetrack. You cannot overtake. It's very difficult to overtake. It's a single line racetrack, and it creates boring races. Perhaps here, if you don't have this Tamburello chicane, but of course, if you have that fast corner and you have an accident like Ayrton Senna and somebody dies, then it's bad. So why do you keep this racetrack in the calendar when you have much better racetracks around the world? You already have an Italian Grand Prix. Why do you have another one? They call it the San Marino, but this racetrack is not in San Marino, it's in Italy. So why would you do that? I mean, it's a classic racetrack, it's nice to drive around, but as a race, it's not good for F1. So, some of the racetracks that I think should be in F1 should be back or should be included as new racetrack. The one in India, for example, which is this one. MotoGP is going to race here. Why is F1 not racing here? We saw some interesting races in the past. We saw Hamilton fighting with I don't know who, right? Overtakings. You have this interesting part. You can overtake here, you can overtake here, you can overtake here. I mean, it could be an interesting racetrack. It was not popular, and I think they cannot pay so much for the F1, so that's why it got out of the calendar. But why isn't it back? Like Domenicali, again, I will say Domenicali several times, but he was saying that they want to bring F1 to new places to get to know and all these things. India is a growing power. Why don't you bring F1 back to India? Why don't you have this marketing for India in the F1? I mean, it was an interesting racetrack. It was built for the F1. So why isn't it back? This racetrack should be in the calendar instead of Monaco, instead of Barcelona, instead of, I don't know, Miami. Why do you have 3 Grand Prix in the USA? And then probably maybe they will bring more to the USA. Malaysia, another Grand Prix that was classic, wide, fun to drive, maybe fun to watch even. I mean, yeah, you can only overtake in 2 points, but even 3 maybe here as well you can overtake. So why don't you have it back? It was a really nice racetrack to watch for the F1. They took it out because Malaysia Grand Prix or whoever, Sepang management said it was not worth having the F1. The cost of hosting an F1 versus the revenue, the profit, it was not worth to have the Malaysian Grand Prix. They said they were not closing the doors, they could be back. So why not bring Sepang back instead of, like I said, having those Arabian Emirates or Saudi Arabia Grand Prix that are, of course, this Grand Prix maybe would pay like 30 million RMB, or the other ones are paying 50 or 60. So, of course, selling the soul, like I say, they are going to the other racetracks, right? This one, I think is in Kazakhstan, if I am not mistaken, built, and MotoGP are going to be racing there. You can see it can be more interesting. I don't know which way it's going to be. I'm going to guess it's going to go down this way. You have this first corner that could be... no, it's actually this way. Okay, so it was clearly mentioned here. So I think it was better going to the other way if you have this corner here. This is the fast corner, you have overtaking chance here, maybe overtaking chance here, you have an overtaking chance here, and who knows, maybe even here if you're fighting closely. This racetrack looks more like an F1 racetrack, a modern F1 racetrack, rather than, again, Monaco, Barcelona, Zandvoort, all these really useless racetracks that you have there. Kazakhstan, another country that perhaps you can bring the marketing and everything for people to go there. You have the one in Kyalami, for example, the one in South Africa, which last year they were negotiating to try to bring it back into the F1, which probably will be back in the calendar once again. You can maybe go to YouTube and watch other videos of races in Kyalami to see how the racetrack looks like. Is it exciting? I don't think this is a very F1 kind of racetrack, but again, for the marketing and all, it would be good to have a South Africa, like to make it like a world championship, right? Instead of having 3 races in the USA, you can have one in South Africa, one in Kazakhstan. I don't know. Bring back India. Do not have the Barcelona Grand Prix to have one in India. I don't know. Maybe here you can overtake. Here, of course, maybe here, I don't know, right? This is the one in Finland, Kimi-ring, also built for MotoGP. They didn't race there so far thanks to the COVID, but I think perhaps next year they will be there. You have the long racetrack here, the straight line here, and the rest of the racetrack is not a very good opportunity for overtaking in F1 perhaps here, but similar like India maybe. With a long straight, but still, you have Finland, you have Finnish drivers in the F1, you have the Raikkonen, now you have Bottas. Perhaps it can help younger Finnish drivers to try to go into F1. Why isn't this racetrack in the calendar? Right? Road America in the USA, it's already built. For me, it makes much more sense to have this Grand Prix in the calendar rather than Miami, built around a football stadium. This racetrack is really nice. I have watched the IndyCar races here and other races as well. You have overtaking chances. There's a big uphill thing here. This strange area over here. I mean, maybe it's not F1. It doesn't have the homologation, or it doesn't have the safety stuff for the F1. But you can remodel it, right? You can invest and have this racetrack, which for me it's much better than Miami or maybe Las Vegas. Why don't you have, this is a very nice racetrack to race in. Why don't you have this racetrack in F1 instead of Miami? There is another one as well. I think it's called Sonoma, if I'm not mistaken. This racetrack also, you have this is the pit lane straight, by the way. This is all in uphill, and then you start going downhill. You have all these nice, interesting areas you can overtake. Why isn't this racetrack that looks kind of like a shorter version of a Spa-Francorchamps instead of Las Vegas? You have already built this kind of racetracks there, and you can see that somebody did this for the F1. It's not the official from the F1, but still, why don't you have this racetrack in the F1 instead of Miami or Las Vegas? Why do you have to bring it to the big cities to make really boring street races when you have already built racetracks? South Korea, they went there several years. Why this race? Like, yeah, it's not the most interesting. Or to drive, maybe it's interesting. All these sections here, fast. You can overtake here, you can overtake here, you can overtake here, and perhaps you can keep fighting over there. I don't know. Again, South Korea. You have Japan. Why not South Korea in the calendar, right? South Korea is not a big country, and I'm guessing they had difficulties to pay the canon of the F1. That's why they are out. Similar like India, perhaps. But still, it was a racetrack built for F1. It should be brought back to try to make it a world championship, not have all the races in Europe and in the USA. You can go to other places, Arabian Emirates as well. You can go to other places, bring back India, South Korea, these kind of places. This is the Czech Republic, MotoGP used to race there. Perhaps this is a nice racetrack where F1 could be interesting, right? Have maybe overtaking chances here, or even here. I mean, I have seen races of lower formulas here, And maybe it's interesting to think about having an F1 race hosted in the Czech Republic instead of Hungary, for example, which is a really boring racetrack as well. But they modified it to try to make it more interesting. Why not have this one, right? This is Hockenheim in the German Grand Prix instead of the Zandvoort. Why not have this one, where you can actually have something interesting? Germany, that has a lot of long history of motorsports. Why not have this racetrack? Why they take it away? Because they cannot pay the canon, because other countries like Arabian Emirates are paying 50 million when Germany cannot even pay 20 million, right? Instead of Zandvoort, you have Assen, where perhaps you can race there to try to make everybody happier. It's more history of motorsport in this racetrack rather than in Zandvoort, for example. You could bring this one. This one, I'm not sure where this racetrack is, to be honest. I'm trying to think where I found this racetrack. Is it Dubai? I think it is Dubai. This racetrack, Dubai, yes, it is Dubai. Instead of Abu Dhabi, why don't you race in this racetrack where it's more like a racetrack, right? You have corners, you have a straight line, more corners. Why not Dubai? Why isn't the F1 racing in Dubai? And yes, in Qatar and Abu Dhabi, in all those countries. Dubai, which is more interesting to go there as a tourism, rather than Abu Dhabi, for example, right? These are just my ideas of how you can improve the calendar of the F1 to try to make it more like a world championship, not just a US-Europe kind of, right? What do you think? Is it just me? Do you also feel that F1 is selling their soul just for money? Trying to make it like a show of money and everything? Sacrificing what the racetracks of emotion and excitement just for the money? Try to make this a big show of lights and everything instead of going to nice racing places. What do you think? Is there any racetrack that you would bring into the calendar? I'm listening. I would like to know people's opinion. However, if you're watching this video, what do you think? Should all the racetracks that perhaps I didn't mention be back in the calendar or brought as a new in other countries? Like they built a big thing in Vietnam and they didn't go there anyway. I would like to know your opinion to see what do you think about this subject, right? Anyway, it was a really long video, by the way. It was something I really wanted to speak about the F1, which I think is not good. Of course, they have to make a balance between money and keeping the calendar interesting. But I can see the tendency of bringing races to places where they pay a lot of money, but the races are not good anyway. So I will make more videos like this. I like to speak about F1. You have many channels to analyze the stuff, so I just like to create debates and talk about interesting facts. If you like it, please subscribe, click the like button, and see you in a future next video of the debate room. See you.